You are doing it too long. I know how that sounds. You have been told that persistence is everything, that faithfulness is the key, that you must dwell in the state until it hardens into fact. And all of that is true, but there is a difference between dwelling in a state and wearing yourself out in repetition. There is a difference between impressing the subconscious and exhausting the conscious mind. You have been working too hard, and in that effort you have missed the very moment the thing was done. Let me be plain with you. When you enter into your imaginal act, when you perform what I have called the state akin to sleep, you are not building something brick by brick. You are not convincing anyone. You are not manifesting through sheer duration. You are doing one thing and one thing only. You are impressing your subconscious mind with the feeling of the wish fulfilled, and that impression, when it lands in an instant. It is a single descent into acceptance. It is brief. It is natural. It is emotionally complete. And when it happens, there is a click, a sense of finality, a quiet yes that rises from within. That is the moment. That is when the work is done. Everything after that is just you wondering if it was enough. It was enough. You see, most of you are reaching for a cinematic experience. You think the scene must be vivid, prolonged, detailed, spectacular. You think you must loop it 20 times, hold it for half an hour, feel it so intensely that you shake with emotion. But I tell you, the subconscious does not care about duration. It cares about conviction. It does not respond to effort. It responds to acceptance. You could spend an hour imagining and impress nothing, or you could spend 30 seconds and change everything. The question is not how long, but how real. Not how many times, but how deeply. Tonight I am going to show you exactly how long your SATS session should be. I am going to give you the signs that the impression has been made. I am going to teach you to recognize the click, that subtle moment of completion that most of you are stepping right past because you think more is better. And I am going to free you from the exhausting belief that you must labor in imagination as though you are earning your desire. You are not earning anything. You are claiming what is already yours. And that claim, when made from the right inner position, takes no time at all. Welcome. If this is your first time here, you have arrived at a place where we do not speculate about the nature of reality. We live from it. This channel is dedicated entirely to the teachings of Neville Goddard, to the principle he spent 40 years proving and proclaiming, that consciousness is the only reality, and that assumption, though false, if persisted in, will harden into fact. Everything you will hear today comes from that foundation. No theory, no borrowed ideas, only what Neville taught, what he lived, and what you can prove for yourself tonight. In this episode, we are answering a question that almost no one asks, but everyone struggles with. How long should your SATS session actually be? You have been told to imagine. You have been told to enter the silence. You have been told to enter the silence. You have been told to loop the scene until you fall asleep. But no one has told you what you are waiting for. And so you imagine and imagine and imagine, hoping that more will somehow be better, that repetition will compensate for doubt, that duration will cover for a lack of feeling. It will not. And tonight you will learn why. We are going to walk through what Neville actually said about the length and the nature of the imaginal act. We are going to identify the moment the impression is made, that quiet click of completion that signals you are done. We are going to dismantle the belief that you must struggle in imagination as of convincing a reluctant deity. And we are going to give you a practice so simple, so natural, so brief, that you will wonder why you ever made it harder than this. Let us begin. There is a teaching that has circulated in the world of manifestation, a belief that says you must hold your mental image for a long time, but you must sustain it with intensity and duration, that the longer you imagine, the more powerful the result. That teaching did not come from Neville. It came from a misunderstanding of what imagination actually is. Imagination is not a tool you wield. It is the creative power of God within you. And God does not labor. God speaks, and it is so. You imagine, and it is done. Neville said this again and again. In Feeling is the Secret, he wrote that your imaginal act should be short, simple, and easily remembered. Not elaborate, not prolonged, short. He said that a single imaginal act, if it is done naturally, if it carries the feeling of reality, is enough to produce the result. 1. Not 100, not an hour's worth. One act, felt truly, is the seed. Everything else is you watering a garden that has already been planted. But you do not believe that, do you? You think that if you stop too soon, if you do not loop it enough, if you do not feel it intensely enough, that the thing will not come. And so you push. You try to make the scene more vivid. You try to feel harder. You extend the session longer and longer, hoping that at some point it will finally take. And what happens? You fall asleep exhausted. You wake up unsure. You wonder if you did it right. And the next night you do it all over again because you never recognized the moment it was already complete. Let me give you an example. A woman once wrote to Neville. She had been imagining for weeks. Every night she would lie down and construct an elaborate scene. She would see herself walking through her new home. She would touch the walls, open the doors, look out the windows, feel the sunlight. She would loop this scene for 30, 40, sometimes 50 minutes. She would fall asleep mid-scene, hoping that was enough. Weeks passed. Nothing moved. She wrote to Neville in frustration, asking what she was doing wrong. His answer was simple. You are doing too much. You are imagining from effort, not from rest. Shorten the scene. Make it a single moment. Feel it once, fully, and let it go. She did. That very night she imagined a single act, her hand on the railing of the stairs in the new home. That was it. One touch, one feeling. It lasted perhaps 10 seconds. But in those 10 seconds she felt it as real. She accepted it. There was a quiet sense of done. She fell asleep. Within 2 weeks the home was hers. What changed? Not the desire, not the outer conditions. What changed was the quality of the impression. She stopped performing and started accepting. She stopped trying to build the reality and started resting in it. The imaginal act became what it was always meant to be, a natural entry into the feeling of the wish fulfilled, not a mental workout. Now you might say, but Neville also said to persist. He said to loop the scene. He said to do it night after night until it hardens into fact. Yes, he did. But you have misunderstood what persistence means. Persistence is not repetition for the sake of convincing yourself. Persistence is not repetition for the sake of convincing yourself. Persistence is the refusal to return to the old state. Persistence is living from the end even when the senses deny it. Persistence is fidelity to the assumption, not fidelity to the technique. The technique is just the entry point. Once you have entered, once the impression is made, the technique has served its purpose. What remains is simply to walk as the one who has. Neville often told the story of Abdullah, his teacher. When Neville came to him and said he wanted to go to Barbados but had no money, Abdullah did not tell him to imagine for hours every night. He did not give him a 6-month visualization schedule. He said, "You are in Barbados." And he shut the door in his face. That was the teaching. Not effort, not duration, identity. Abdullah knew that the moment Neville assumed he was in Barbados, it was done. The imaginal act that followed was just Neville impressing that assumption into his subconscious. And he did. He imagined the simple act of climbing a gangplank onto a ship. He felt the rail under his hand. He did it briefly, naturally, and with the feeling that it was real. That was all. He did not do it for an hour. He did not loop it 20 times. He did it until it felt done, and then he let it go. This is the key you have been missing. The imaginal act is not the source of the power. You are. Consciousness is. The act is simply the bridge between your desire and your acceptance of it, and that bridge need only be crossed once. You do not cross a bridge 100 times to get to the other side. You cross it, you arrive, and you are there. The same is true of imagination. You imagine, you feel, you accept, and it is done. So how do you know when it is done? How do you recognize that moment? Neville called it the feeling of relief. Others have called it the inner yes. I call it the click. It is that quiet moment when something inside you releases, when the desire stops being a longing and becomes a knowing, when the scene stops feeling like a wish and starts feeling like a memory. It is subtle. It is not dramatic. You will not hear trumpets. You will not see light. But you will not see light. But you will feel a shift, a settling, a sense that it is finished. Let me describe it more carefully. When you enter into your imaginal scene, at first there is effort. You are constructing. You are focusing. You are trying to see, to feel, to make it real. But if you stay with it, if you allow yourself to relax into it, there comes a moment when the effort drops away. The scene begins to move on its own. You are no longer making it happen. It is happening. You are in it. And then, just for an instant, you feel a quiet completion, a sense of yes, of course, it is done. That is the moment. That is the impression landing. That is when you stop. But what do most of you do? You do not notice it. You don't note it. You step right past it because you think you are supposed to keep going. You think you are supposed to loop it, repeat it, intensify it, and so you do. And the moment you go back into effort, the moment you try to make it happen again, you undo the very acceptance you just achieved. You return to wanting. You return to seeking. And the impression is covered over by doubt. This is why Neville said, your session should end in sleep. Not because sleep itself is magic, but because sleep itself is magic. But because sleep is severe. When you fall asleep, you stop trying, you let go. And in that letting go, the subconscious is free to accept what you have impressed. If you continue imagining past the point of naturalness, if you force yourself to stay awake and loop the scene mechanically, you are not deepening the impression. You are resisting the very rest that would seal it. Think of it this way. The subconscious mind is like still water. The imaginal act is a stone you drop into it. The ripple is instant. The moment the stone touches the water, the impression is made. You do not need to drop 100 stones. You do not need to hold the stone under the water for 10 minutes. You drop it, you let it sink, and you trust the ripple to spread. That is all. The work is not in the repetition. The work is in the release. Now, I am not saying you should only imagine once and never again. There are times when you will return to the scene, because the state has not yet stabilized. There are times when the old assumptions creep back in, and you must re-enter the wish fulfilled to restore your faith. That is natural. But each time you imagine, you are not starting over. You are returning to what is already true. And each time, the session should be brief, natural, and complete in itself. You are not accumulating power. You are remembering who you are. Neville once said that when he imagined, he did so as briefly as possible. Sometimes only a few seconds. He did so as briefly as possible. He would reduce the scene to a single sensory impression, a handshake, a congratulatory word, the feeling of wearing a ring in a being, and he would loop that impression only until it felt real, not until he was exhausted, not until he was exhausted, not until the alarm went off, until it felt real, and then he would sleep. That was the entire practice. Brief, focused, emotionally complete, and it worked every single time. So let me now tell you plainly, your SATS session should last as long as it takes for you to feel the reality of the wish fulfilled. That might be 30 seconds. It might be 3 minutes. It will rarely be longer than 5 or 10. If you are imagining for half an hour, you are no longer impressing. You are performing. And performance does not convince the subconscious. Only acceptance does. When you lie down tonight, you are not going to construct an elaborate scene. You are not going to try to see every detail. You are going to choose one simple act that implies the fulfillment of your desire. One act. It should be something you would experience if the desire were already fact. A congratulations, a touch, a glance in the mirror, a phrase someone says to you, something short, something repeatable, something that carries the feeling. You are going to close your eyes and enter into a drowsy state, not fully asleep, but deeply relaxed. Your body still, your mind quiet, your awareness turned inward, and in that state, you are going to gently place yourself in the scene. You are not going to force it. You are not going to strain to see. You are going to assume you are there and let the feeling follow. You will repeat the action softly, naturally, as though you were remembering something that just happened. And as you do, you will pay attention not to the vividness of the image, but to the feeling it produces. Does it feel real? Does it feel natural? Does it feel like yours? If it does, stay with it. If it does not, gently adjust. Make it simpler. Make it softer. Let it become easy. And then, at some point, you will feel it. That quiet click. That sense of yes, of completion, of relief. You will know it when it happens. It is not loud. It is not dramatic. but it is unmistakable. It is the moment your subconscious says, I accept this. And when you feel it, you stop. You do not go back. You do not loop it again. You let yourself drift into sleep from that feeling of completion. That is the entire practice. If you fall asleep before the click, that is fine. The drowsiness itself is often the sign that the impression is being made. The subconscious is taking over. Let it. If you do not feel the click at all, do not worry. It does not mean you failed. It means you are still learning to recognize it. Try again tomorrow. Shorten the scene. Simplify the feeling. Make it so easy that you cannot help but accept it. The click will come. And when it does, you will never forget what it feels like. Now let us go deeper. Let us talk about why this matters beyond just getting your session length right. Because this is not really about time. It is about trust. It is about the fundamental question of whether you believe that consciousness is the only reality, or whether you still think you are manipulating something outside yourself. When you imagine for too long, when you loop the scene over and over, when you try to make it more vivid, more intense, more convincing, you are operating from the belief that the imaginal act itself is the cause, that if you just do it right enough, reality will respond. But that is not how it works. The imaginal act is not the cause. Your assumption is. The act is simply the way you enter into the assumption. And once you have entered, once you have assumed the state, the act has served its purpose. Neville said that creation is finished. Everything that ever was or ever will be already exists in consciousness. You are not creating your desire through imagination. You are selecting it. You are selecting it. You are tuning into the version of reality where it is already yours. The imaginal act is the tuning mechanism. But you do not need to turn the dial for an hour. You turn it until you hear the signal clearly, and then you stop. You do not keep turning. You listen. You rest. You accept. This is what it means to live by faith. Faith is not hoping your imagination will work. Faith is knowing that it already has. The moment you assume the wish fulfilled, it is done in consciousness. And because consciousness is the only reality, it is done absolutely. The outer world, what Neville called the world of Caesar, is simply the shadow of your inner assumptions. It must conform. It has no choice. But it conforms in its own time, in its own way. Your job is not to make it conform. Your job is to remain faithful to the assumption. And you do that not by repeating the technique, but by living from the end. Living from the end means you think from the wish fulfilled. You speak from it. You feel from it. If someone asks you about the thing you desire, you do not say, I am trying to manifest it. You do not say, I hope it comes. You say in your inner conversations, it is done. You speak to yourself as the one who has. That is persistence. That is faithfulness. Not the nightly repetition of a scene, but the constant return to the state. And here is the secret. When you live from the end, when you truly inhabit the state, you will find that you no longer need to imagine at all. The state sustains itself. The feeling becomes natural. You walk through your day as the one who has, and the imaginal act becomes unnecessary. It was only ever the entry point. Once you are in, you are in. You do not need to keep knocking on a door that is already open. Neville once told a story about a woman who desired marriage. She came to him and asked how long she should imagine. He told her, imagine once, with feeling, and then live as though it is done. She protested. Once, just once, he said, if you truly accept it. Once is, he said, if you truly accept it. Once is enough. She went home. That night she imagined a simple scene, a man sieving a waina. She felt it. She accepted it. She never imagined it again. Instead, she began to think of herself as a woman who was loved, who was chosen, who was married in consciousness. She wore that state. She lived from it. Within 3 months, she met the man. Within 6, they were engaged. Within a year, the scene she had imagined once played out in the physical world, exactly as she had felt it. That is the power of a single impression, accepted fully. That is what happens when you stop performing and start possessing. You do not need more imagination. You need more faith. And faith is not built through repetition. It is built through recognition, through knowing that the thing is already done. So let me ask you, when you imagine tonight, Are you going to imagine as someone who is trying to make something happen? Or are you going to imagine as someone who is remembering what is already true? Are you going to labor in your mind, hoping that effort will convince the universe? Or are you going to rest in the assumption, knowing that consciousness is the only cause and that what you have assumed must be? The length of your session is not the measure of your faith. The length of your session is not the measure of your faith. The feeling is. You could imagine for 1 second and change everything. Or you could imagine for an hour and change nothing. It is not the duration. It is the depth. It is the acceptance. It is the quiet, wordless knowing that it is done. And when you feel that, you stop. You release the oars. You let the current carry you. You fall asleep in the feeling of the wish fulfilled. And you let your subconscious do what it was designed to do. Externalize your assumptions as facts. Let us now turn this into something you can do today. Right now, wherever you are, I want you to think of one desire, one thing you want to experience. Do not choose the biggest, most complicated thing. Choose something that makes you smile when you think of it, something that would feel wonderful to have. Now reduce that desire to a single sensory moment, not a story, not a sequence of events, one moment that would only happen if the desire were already fulfilled. It could be someone congratulating you. It could be someone congratulating you. It could be seeing your reflection and recognizing a change. It could be hearing a phrase. Make it simple. Make it short. Make it short. Make it something you can loop in a few seconds. Got it? Good. Now I want you to close your eyes for just a moment. Take a deep breath. Let your body relax. You do not need to be in bed. You do not need to be in a deep meditative state. Just let yourself become still. And now, gently, I want you to imagine that moment. Do not try to see it perfectly. Do not worry if it is vague. Just assume you are there. Feel it. Hear it. Sense it. Let it be easy. Let it be easy. Let it be natural. Loop it 3 times. Softly, gently. And as you do, notice what you feel. Does it feel real? Does it feel like yours? Does it feel possible? If it does, stay with it. If it does not, adjust it. Make it simpler. Make it closer. Make it simpler. Make it something you can accept. And then, when you feel even the smallest sense of yes, of relief, of doneness, stop. Open your eyes. You are finished. That is the entire mechanism. You have just impressed your subconscious. You have just planted the seed. Now let it grow. Do not dig it up to check if it is sprouting. Do not imagine it again and again out of fear that it did not take. Trust that it did. Walk through your day as the one who has. And tonight, if you feel called to return to the scene, do so, but do it the same way. Briefly, naturally, completely, and then let it go. This is how Neville imagined. This is how Neville imagined. This is how Neville imagined. This is how Neville imdastics. This is how Neville imagined. This is how every promise was kept, not through marathon cut, through simple, natural, emotionally complete assumption. You are not trying to create, you are claiming. You are not trying to convince, you are accepting. And acceptance does not take long, it takes depth. Now let us step back and see what this reveals about who you are. You are not a person who must beg reality to conform. You are not a person who must beg reality to conform. You are not a person who must work and strive and imagine for hours to earn your good. You are consciousness itself. You are the operant power. You are the one in whom all things exist. And when you assume a state, when you claim an identity, the entire structure of reality rearranges itself to reflect that assumption. Not because you have pleased some external force, but because you are the force. Consciousness is the only reality. You are that consciousness. And what you are conscious of being, you are that consciousness. And what you are and you experience. This is the truth Neville spent 40 years proclaiming, not as philosophy, not as metaphor, as fact. He proved it again and again. He taught it to thousands, and every single person who applied it, who truly assumed the wish fulfilled and persisted in that assumption, saw it externalized. Not some of them, all of them, because the law is impersonal. It does not care who you are, what you have done, or how long you have waited. It only cares what you are assuming now. And so when you shorten your imaginal act, when you let it be brief and natural and complete, you are not doing less. You are doing what is required. You are impressing the subconscious without exhausting the conscious mind. You are claiming without striving. You are resting in the knowledge that it is already done. And that rest, that faith, that acceptance is what allows the thing to come into being. You do not need to imagine longer. You need to assume deeper. You do not need more technique. You need more trust. And trust is not built through effort. It is built through recognition, through the quiet click of knowing, through the moment when something inside you says, yes, this is mine, and you believe it. That is the moment. That is the length. That is all you need. So tonight, as you lie down to sleep, I want you to remember this. You are not trying to make anything happen. You are accepting what is already true in consciousness. You are not performing a ritual. You are entering into rest. And that rest, that acceptance, that assumption, is the creative act. The imaginal scene is just the doorway. Walk through it. Feel the reality on the other side and stay there. Do not keep walking back and forth through the door. Walk through once, fully, and remain. That is faith. That is the secret. That is the secret. That is how it is done. You are not doing it too long because you are disciplined. You are doing it too long because you are undisciplined. You are doing it too long because you do not yet trust that it worked. And I am telling you now, it worked. The moment you felt it as real, the moment you accepted it, it would bud. The subconscious received the impression. The seed was planted. Now let it grow. Do not dig it up. Do not replant it every night out of fear. Water it with your assumption. Tend it with your inner conversations. Let it grow in the dark, in the silence, in the invisible realm of consciousness. And in time it will push through into the light. It must. Because consciousness is the only reality. And what you assume, you become. This is the teaching. This is the truth. And this is what will set you free. Not from the world, but from the belief that the world has power over you. It does not. You are the power. You are the creator. And your creation does not require hours of labor. It requires a single moment of full acceptance. A single click. A single yes. Find that moment tonight. Feel it. Trust it. And let everything else go. That is the length of your SATS session. That is the measure of your faith. That is all you need. And so as we close, I want you to carry this with you. The question you came with, how long should I imagine, is no longer a question. It is an answer. You imagine as long as it takes to feel it as real. Not a second more, not out of laziness, but out of trust. Out of the recognition that the work is not in the repetition, but in the acceptance. And acceptance, true acceptance, happens in an instant. Tonight, when you close your eyes, you are going to imagine you're seeing once, maybe twice. You are going to feel it as naturally as you would recall a memory. And when you feel that quiet click, that sense of relief, that inner yes, you are going to stop. You are going to smile. You are going to whisper to yourself, it is done. And you are going to whisper to yourself, it is done. And you are going to fall asleep in that knowledge, in that rest, in that faith. And tomorrow you are going to walk as the one who has, not hoping, not wondering, knowing. That is the teaching. That is the promise. And that is who you are. Go now. Try it. Dare to assume it. And watch as the world which is yourself pushed out reflects back to you the very thing you have claimed in silence. It is done.